The story begins in 1701, in the Kingdom of Prussia. Friedrich I, the newly crowned king in Prussia, he was careful about that title, in Prussia, not of, wanted something extraordinary for his wife, Sophie Charlotte. He commissioned a room. Not merely a decorated room, but a room made of amber. The work was entrusted to the Danish amber craftsman Gottfried Wolfram, and later to the Danzig masters Ernst Schacht and Gottfried Thurau. The task was enormously difficult. Amber is brittle. It cracks under pressure. It cannot be carved in large pieces. Each panel had to be assembled from hundreds of small, carefully matched fragments, fitted together on a wooden backing, their colors graded from pale honey to deep cognac, so that the surface appeared to flow like a single unbroken sheet of light. The work took more than 10 years. By the time it was installed, first at the Charlottenburg Palace in Berlin, then moved to the Berlin City Palace, Friedrich had lost interest. Or perhaps he had run out of patience. The room was magnificent, but it was also incomplete. Some sections were still backed with painted canvas rather than amber. And then, in 1716, everything changed. Peter the Great of Russia visited Prussia. He saw the amber panels. And he wanted them. Friedrich Wilhelm I, Friedrich's son, now king, was a pragmatic man. He was not interested in amber. He was interested in soldiers. Peter offered him a company of exceptionally tall grenadiers, 248 men chosen for their height, to serve in Friedrich Wilhelm's personal regiment of giants, the Lange Curls. The deal was struck. The amber panels were packed into 18 large crates and sent east, by wagon and by ship, to Saint Petersburg. It was a gift between kings, a gesture of alliance. But it was also a trade. Art for soldiers. Beauty for force. In Russia, the panels were initially installed in the Winter House in St. Petersburg. But Peter died in 1725, and the room waited. It was his daughter, Empress Elizabeth, who finally commissioned the Italian architect Bartolomeo Francesco Rastrelli to install the panels in the Catherine Palace at Tsarskoye Selo, about 25 kilometers south of St. Petersburg. Rastrelli expanded the room. He added mirrors, gilded carvings, Florentine mosaics of precious stones, and additional amber panels to fill the larger space. The completed room covered roughly 55 square meters of wall. For Florentine mosaics depicted the 5 senses. 3 mirrored pilasters broke the amber surface, reflecting the candlelight endlessly. When the 565 candles were lit, the room glowed. It is said that visitors wept. For nearly 200 years, the amber room stood in the Catherine Palace. It survived revolutions in taste. It survived the rise and fall of empires. Tsars came and went. The Romanov dynasty endured, and the room endured with them. Then came the 20th century. After the Russian Revolution of 1917, the palace was nationalized. The amber room became a museum exhibit. Soviet curators cared for it, though amber is fragile and the room required constant maintenance. By the 1930s, parts of the amber had begun to dry and crack. The curators recorded every panel, every mosaic, every ornamental detail, photographing the room in color and in black and white. Those photographs would become the only complete record of what the room looked like. In June 1941, Germany invaded the Soviet Union. Army Group North advanced rapidly toward Leningrad. Tsarskoye Selo lay directly in the path of the advance. The Soviet curators tried to dismantle the amber room and evacuate it. But the amber was too fragile. When workers attempted to remove the panels, they began to crumble. There was no time. Instead, the curators covered the walls with thin muslin, then with layers of cotton wadding, then with wooden boards, hoping that the padding would protect the amber from shrapnel and concussion. It did not protect it from the Germans. German soldiers entered the Catherine Palace in September 1941. They found the amber room almost immediately. Within 36 hours, a team of specialists dismantled the panels more carefully than the Soviet curators had managed, packed them into 27 crates, and shipped them west. The crates were sent to Königsberg, the capital of East Prussia, present-day Kaliningrad. There, the amber panels were installed in a hall of the Königsberg Castle Museum, under the supervision of Alfred Rode, the museum's director and an authority on amber. Rode reassembled the room. He invited visitors. He published articles about it in German art journals. For 3 years, the amber room stood in Königsberg. And then the war came to Königsberg. In August 1944, British bombers struck the city centre. The castle was damaged. Parts of the museum burned. Rode reported that the amber room survived the raid, but that it had been packed into crates again, stored in the castle cellar for safety. In January 1945, the Soviet army began its assault on East Prussia. Königsberg was besieged. The bombardment was ferocious. By the time Soviet forces entered the castle in April 1945, it was a burnt-out shell. The amber room was gone. What happened to it? That question has consumed treasure hunters, historians, intelligence agents, and journalists for 80 years. The simplest explanation is that it burned. Amber is resin. It is flammable. The castle burned for days. If the crates were still in the cellar when the fires reached them, the amber would have been destroyed. Alfred Rode, who knew more about the room's fate than anyone, died in mysterious circumstances shortly after the war. He and his wife were found dead in early 1946, apparently of typhus, though some investigators have questioned that diagnosis. His papers were largely destroyed or lost. The chain of evidence ends with him. But there are other theories, and they have proved irresistible. Some believe the crates were evacuated from Königsberg before the siege, loaded onto a ship or a train and sent to some safer location in central Germany. Over the decades, searches have been conducted in salt mines, bunkers, tunnels, and cellars across Germany, Poland, the Czech Republic, Austria, and even Denmark. In 1997, German police recovered a single piece, a Florentine mosaic panel depicting touch and smell, in the possession of the family of a German soldier. It was authenticated. It was the only original fragment ever recovered. The mosaic is now in Zarskoye Selo. The Stasi, East Germany's secret police, spent decades searching for the amber room. They interrogated witnesses, followed leads, excavated sites. They found nothing. The KGB searched too. They also found nothing. In 2008, a team of researchers claimed to have located a hidden chamber beneath a bunker in the German town of Wuppertal. It was empty. In 2020, a group of treasure hunters announced they had found the room in a tunnel complex in Poland. They had not. The amber room has become a kind of phantom. It is everywhere and nowhere. It recedes the moment you reach for it. In 1979, the Soviet government decided to rebuild the amber room from scratch. The project was based on those photographs taken by the Soviet curators in the 1930s, supplemented by Rastrelli's original designs and surviving German documentation. The work was painstaking. Russian craftsmen spent 24 years learning techniques that had been lost for centuries: how to select and match amber by color, how to cut thin veneers without shattering them, how to heat amber to increase its translucence, how to back it with foil so that it glowed. They used more than 6 tons of amber, sourced from the same Baltic deposits that had supplied the original room 300 years before. The reconstructed room was inaugurated in 2003, in time for the 300th anniversary of Saint Petersburg. President Putin and Chancellor Schroeder attended the ceremony. The room gleams. The candles, now electric, light the amber, and the mirrors double it, and the mosaics shine. It is beautiful. And it is not the same. There is something about the original that the replica cannot capture. Not a flaw in the craftsmanship, the reconstruction is superb. But the original carried time inside it. The amber itself was 40 million years old, resin from forests that existed before human beings walked the earth. It had been shaped by hands in 1701, touched by hands for 240 years, warmed by the breath of tsars and revolutionaries and museum visitors and soldiers. It had absorbed all of that. A replica carries no such weight. It is new amber, new hands, new breath. It is a photograph of a memory. And perhaps that is the deeper story here. Not a mystery of crates and trains and bunkers, but a meditation on what we lose in war, and whether we can ever truly rebuild it. The amber room was not a strategic target. It had no military value. It was a room where light moved through stone, and the stone was the color of honey, and the effect was one of stillness, and warmth, and awe. It was taken because it was beautiful. It was lost because the world caught fire. Whether it survives somewhere, in a flooded mine, in a forgotten cellar, in crates behind a false wall, we do not know. Perhaps one day a construction crew will break through a concrete floor and find 27 wooden boxes, sealed since 1945, and inside them the amber will still glow. Or perhaps the fire took everything, and what remains is only the memory of light. Tonight, somewhere in the Catherine Palace, electric candles light 6 tons of new amber. The mirrors reflect it. The mosaics gleam. Visitors stand in the doorway and catch their breath. It is not the room that Peter received, or Elizabeth completed, or the Nazis stole. But it remembers. That, perhaps, is enough. To remember the shape of what was lost. To rebuild it, not as it was, but as closely as hands can manage. To light the candles and let the amber glow, and to sit for a moment in the warmth of something that was once thought gone forever. If you've enjoyed this story, you can subscribe. More like this, next week. Sleep well.